Good evening, and welcome to Truth Report. I'm Alex Truth. Tonight, we are tracking a seismic shift in global energy politics. A Supreme Court ruling that just blew the doors open on US-China trade, a nuclear standoff with Iran that could send oil prices through the roof, and a tiny island nation that might have just cracked the code on clean transportation.
I'm Maya Clarity, and this is not your typical news roundup. Tonight we're connecting dots that the mainstream press doesn't want you to see. From tariff courts to nuclear threats to battery breakthroughs, every story tonight comes back to one thing: who controls the future of energy, and who profits from keeping us dependent on the old systems.
We've also got two pieces of cutting-edge science coming out of the research labs that could reshape how we store and generate power for the next century. But first, let's start with the bombshell that dropped from the highest court in the land.
That's right. The U.S. Supreme Court has blocked President Trump's tariffs on Chinese goods, and the ripple effects are already being felt from factory floors in Guangdong to trading desks on Wall Street. This isn't just a legal ruling. This is a geopolitical earthquake.
So let's dig in. Story 1 tonight: what happens to China's export machine now that the Supreme Court has pulled the rug out from under Trump's tariff regime? Buckle up, folks.
According to reporting from the South China Morning Post, China's sprawling export sector is now eyeing what analysts are calling a brief window of opportunity. With the Supreme Court ruling effectively easing tariff rates, Chinese manufacturers are scrambling to front-load shipments to the United States. They're racing to get as much product across the Pacific as possible before the political winds shift again.
And that's the key detail here. This isn't celebration in Beijing. This is a calculated sprint. Industry insiders the Post spoke with say they remain deeply wary of potential shocks ahead. They know this window could slam shut at any moment, and they're treating it like a countdown clock, not a victory lap.
The timing is everything, Alex. All eyes are now on the upcoming Beijing summit, where President Trump is set to meet President Xi Jinping. This visit could prove decisive for the future of bilateral trade. We're talking about the two largest economies on the planet sitting down at a moment when the legal architecture of their trade war has just been dismantled by the judiciary.
Let's talk about what was actually at stake with these tariffs. We're talking about levies that covered hundreds of billions of dollars in Chinese goods. Electronics, solar panels, batteries, steel, aluminum, electric vehicle components. These tariffs weren't just trade policy. They were energy policy by another name. When you tax solar panels and EV batteries coming from China, you are deliberately slowing down the clean energy transition in America.
And that's what the mainstream coverage misses entirely. The framing is always trade war or national security. But follow the money. Who benefits when Chinese solar panels get a 25% tariff slapped on them? It's not American solar manufacturers, most of whom source components from Asia anyway. It's the fossil fuel industry that gets to keep its market share for another few years while domestic alternatives struggle to compete on price.
Now with the Supreme Court stepping in, that protection racket has a crack in it. Chinese exporters told the South China Morning Post they're accelerating shipments of everything from photovoltaic cells to lithium-ion battery components. The question is whether this front-loading creates enough momentum to shift the energy economics on the ground in the US before the political class finds another way to block it.
And here's where the Beijing summit becomes critical. If Trump and Xi reach any kind of framework agreement, we could see a more stable, lower tariff trade environment for clean energy goods. But if the summit collapses, or if Trump uses it as political theater, we could see executive action attempting to reimpose barriers, Supreme Court ruling or not. The exporters know this. That's why they're shipping now, not waiting.
The deeper pattern here is one we've tracked on this show for months. The US political establishment is caught between two forces: the economic reality that Chinese manufacturing dominates clean energy supply chains, and the political imperative to look tough on China. The Supreme Court just told the executive branch it can't have it both ways without legal authority from Congress.
And Congress, as we know, is gridlocked. So we're in this extraordinary limbo where the judicial branch has opened a door that the legislative branch can't close and the executive branch is furious about. Meanwhile, containers full of solar inverters and battery cells are loading onto ships in Shenzhen as we speak. The market doesn't wait for politics, Alex.
It never does. Now let's pivot to a story that could make this entire trade discussion irrelevant if it escalates further. Iran. And this one has direct, immediate implications for global energy markets.
Al Jazeera is reporting tonight that Iran's Ministry of Foreign Affairs has issued a statement saying Iran is ready for talks but will defend itself against U.S. aggression. This comes directly after President Trump stated publicly that he is considering a military attack on Iran if a nuclear deal is not reached.
Let's be very clear about what's happening here. The President of the United States has openly threatened military strikes against a sovereign nation that sits on some of the largest oil and natural gas reserves on the planet, a nation that borders the Strait of Hormuz, through which roughly 20% of the world's oil supply passes every single day.
The language from Iran's foreign ministry is calibrated, but firm. They're signaling diplomatic willingness while making absolutely clear they will not negotiate under the threat of bombs. This is a posture we've seen before from Tehran, but the context is different now. Trump isn't bluffing from the campaign trail. He's speaking as a sitting president with military assets already deployed in the region.
And here's the energy angle that should terrify every consumer watching this show. If this situation escalates to even limited military engagement near the Strait of Hormuz, you're looking at an immediate oil price shock. We're talking crude potentially spiking 30, 40, 50% overnight. That translates directly to gasoline prices, heating oil, jet fuel, and the cost of every single product that moves by truck or ship.
The irony is staggering. The same administration that claims to want lower energy prices for American families is openly threatening an action that would cause the single largest energy price spike in a generation. You cannot simultaneously promise cheap gas and threaten to bomb the choke point through which a fifth of global oil transits. The math doesn't work.
And let's talk about who benefits from this saber-rattling even if no shots are fired. Oil futures traders are already pricing in risk premiums. Defense contractors see their stock ticking up every time Trump makes a threat. And the petrostates, including U.S. shale producers, benefit from any uncertainty that keeps oil prices elevated. The threat itself is profitable for certain interests.
Meanwhile, Iran sits on the fourth largest proven oil reserves and the second largest natural gas reserves in the world. A diplomatic solution that brought Iranian energy back fully onto global markets would increase supply and push prices down. That's good for consumers everywhere. It's bad for competitors who want to keep supply tight and prices high.
So when you hear nuclear deal, don't just think about centrifuges and enrichment. Think about millions of barrels of oil that are either on the market or off the market. Think about liquefied natural gas that could flow to energy-hungry nations in Asia and Europe. The nuclear file is inseparable from the energy file, and anyone who tells you otherwise is selling you something.
The diplomatic path Iran says it's offering would be the rational choice for global energy stability. But rationality has never been the dominant force in this particular relationship. What we're watching is a high-stakes game of chicken where the collateral damage isn't just geopolitical. It's the price you pay to heat your home and fill your tank.
We'll be tracking this one closely. Now let's shift gears to a story that offers something rare on this show, genuine hope. Taiwan, an island of 23 million people, decided to put its money where its mouth is on clean transportation. And the results are remarkable.
Electrek is reporting on Taiwan's ambitious subsidy program that pays citizens to switch from gas-powered scooters and cars to electric alternatives. Now, if you've never been to Taipei, you need to understand something. When a traffic light turns green in Taiwan, it's not just cars that move. It's a tidal wave of scooters. Scooters outnumber cars roughly 2 to 1. They are the circulatory system of Taiwanese daily life.
And that means they're also one of the country's biggest sources of transportation-related pollution. Particularly the older two-stroke engine scooters, which are essentially rolling smokestacks. Taiwan looked at this problem and instead of just setting distant targets or issuing regulations, they opened the government wallet and started paying people directly to make the switch.
The subsidy structure is layered. The central government offers incentives in the range of 7 to 10,000 new Taiwan dollars per electric scooter purchase, roughly $220 to $330 US. But then local city and county governments stack additional subsidies on top. And if you're scrapping an old two-stroke scooter, there are bonus payments for that too. The total incentive package can be substantial enough to make the economics of going electric a no-brainer for most consumers.
And here's what's critical about the Taiwan model. They didn't just subsidize the vehicles. The market responded with infrastructure. Companies like Gogoro built a massive battery-swapping network with over 12,000 stations across the island. You pull up, pop out your dead battery, slot in a fresh one, and you're gone in seconds. No charging cables, no waiting, no range anxiety. It's like a gas station for the electric age.
Gogoro's model is genuinely innovative. They went public on NASDAQ and licensed their powered by Gogoro network platform to other manufacturers. Traditional scooter giants like Kimco launched competing electric lines with their own battery swapping and home charging approaches. Competition drove innovation, and the consumer benefited. This is what happens when government subsidy creates a market big enough for private enterprise to invest in seriously.
The adoption numbers tell the story. Electric scooter sales captured nearly 18% of new scooter sales at their peak, and after a brief policy wobble when subsidies were controversially extended to fuel-efficient gas scooters, the trajectory has resumed its upward climb. We're now looking at well over 600,000 cumulative electric scooter registrations and growing.
Now, the skeptics will say 18% isn't a revolution. But consider the context. Taiwan has over 14 million registered scooters. Turning that fleet electric is like turning the entire US passenger car fleet electric. It's a generational project. What Taiwan has demonstrated is that direct consumer subsidies, combined with infrastructure investment, can shift the curve meaningfully and create self-sustaining market dynamics. The subsidies kickstarted something that now has its own momentum.
And the environmental returns are real and measurable. Each electric scooter replacing an old two-stroke model eliminates several hundred kilograms of CO2 per year, along with significant reductions in particulate matter and nitrogen oxides. Scale that across hundreds of thousands of vehicles in dense urban areas, and you're talking about tangible improvements in air quality that people can literally breathe.
There's a lesson here for every country, and particularly for the United States. Taiwan didn't wait for a technological miracle. They used policy to accelerate adoption of technology that already existed. They made it economically rational for individual citizens to choose the cleaner option. No mandates, no bans, just aligned incentives. And the market did the rest.
Compare that to the approach we just discussed in Story 1, where tariffs on Chinese EV components actually make clean transportation more expensive for American consumers. Taiwan went the opposite direction: make it cheaper, make it easier, and watch people switch voluntarily. The results speak for themselves.
Now let's turn to our science desk, because what's happening in the research labs today becomes the energy infrastructure of tomorrow. A new paper on the AR14 preprint server is tackling one of the most stubborn problems in battery technology, and it could have enormous implications for everything from electric vehicles to grid-scale energy storage.
The paper is titled Identification of Solid-Electrolyte Interphase Species by Joint Characterization of Li-ion Battery Chemistry by Mass Spectrometry and Electrochemical Reaction Networks. That's a mouthful, so let me translate. Inside every lithium-ion battery, there's a microscopically thin layer that forms on the electrode surface called the solid-electrolyte interface, or SEI. And this tiny layer basically determines whether your battery lasts 2 years or 20.
Think of the SEI as a gatekeeper. It needs to let lithium ions pass through while blocking electrons and preventing the electrolyte from decomposing further. When the SEI is stable and well-formed, your battery charges efficiently, lasts a long time, and operates safely. When it's unstable, it continuously breaks down and reforms, eating up lithium and electrolyte, causing your battery to degrade and, in worst-case scenarios, contributing to thermal runaway. That's the technical term for when your battery catches fire.
Despite decades of research, scientists haven't been able to fully characterize this layer at the molecular level. It's incredibly thin, just 10 to 50 nanometers. It's chemically complex, made up of dozens or hundreds of different species. It's air and moisture sensitive. And it's dynamic, changing constantly during charging and discharging. It has, as the researchers put it, defied comprehensive molecular-level characterization.
What this team has done is combine two powerful techniques that are usually used separately. First, mass spectrometry, which can identify chemical species by their molecular weight. Second, computational electrochemical reaction networks, which use quantum chemical calculations to predict every possible chemical reaction that could occur inside the battery and what products those reactions would create.
By running these two approaches in parallel and matching the computational predictions against the experimental measurements, they can identify SEI species with far greater confidence than either method alone. It's like having both a witness description and DNA evidence instead of just one or the other. The match between prediction and observation gives you a much clearer picture of what's actually happening at the molecular level.
And here's why this matters for the energy transition. The next generation of batteries, the ones we need for long-range electric vehicles and grid storage, use silicon anodes and lithium metal anodes that are far more energy-dense than current graphite-based technology. But these advanced anodes have a devastating problem. Silicon expands by 300% during charging, cracking the SEI layer repeatedly. Lithium metal grows dendrites that punch through it. Without solving the SEI problem, these next-generation batteries can't reach their potential.
This research gives scientists a roadmap for rational electrolyte design. Instead of trial and error, mixing chemicals, and hoping for the best, you can now computationally predict what SEI a new electrolyte formulation will create before you ever build a cell. That accelerates the entire battery development pipeline, and in an era where we need better batteries yesterday, that acceleration matters enormously.
And for those tracking the broader energy storage market, This is the kind of foundational science that underpins the multi-trillion-dollar bet the world is making on electrification. Every electric vehicle, every grid battery, every portable device depends on lithium-ion chemistry working reliably for years. Understanding the SEI at this level isn't just academic. It's the difference between batteries that meet their promise and batteries that don't.
Our final story tonight takes us to the absolute frontier of fundamental physics, and while it might seem far from the energy beat, stick with us, because the connections are real. Researchers at the China Spallation Neutron Source, known as CSNS, have published new work on neutron polarization for parity violation studies. The paper comes from the Electrek's collaboration, the Neutron Optics Parity and Time Reversal Experiment.
Okay, Alex, I know our audience is smart, but let's unpack this. CSNS is a major research facility in Dongguan, Guangdong Province. It produces beams of neutrons by smashing protons into a heavy metal target, a process called spallation. These neutrons are then directed down beamlines where they interact with various materials, and scientists measure what happens. The back-end beamline used in this study produces neutrons across a very broad energy range, making it ideal for nuclear physics experiments.
What Electrek is searching for is something called time reversal violation, and the reason matters for cosmology. The universe is made almost entirely of matter, with virtually no antimatter. But the laws of physics as we currently understand them say the Big Bang should have produced equal amounts of both. The fact that we exist at all, that there's a universe of matter to live in, means something tipped the scales. Physicists call this the baryon symmetry problem, and solving it requires finding new sources of symmetry violation beyond what the standard model of physics predicts.
The clever trick Electrek exploits is that certain nuclear resonances, when neutrons interact with heavy nuclei at specific energies in the electron-volt range, amplify symmetry-violating effects by factors of 1,000,000 or more. It's like nature provides a built-in magnifying glass. By polarizing neutrons, meaning aligning their spins, and passing them through target materials, researchers can detect incredibly subtle violations of fundamental symmetries that would be invisible in other experimental setups.
The technical achievement here is significant. Polarizing neutrons at these epithermal energies is genuinely difficult. Standard techniques that work for cold neutrons don't apply. The fact that this capability has been developed at CSNS's back-end beamline means China now has a world-class facility for this type of fundamental physics research, joining a select group of institutions globally that can do this work.
Now, here's the energy connection, and it's twofold. First, spallation neutron sources like CSNS are essential infrastructure for nuclear energy research. The same beamlines that probe fundamental symmetries also measure neutron cross-sections, the probability of neutrons interacting with various materials, which are critical data for designing next-generation nuclear reactors, thorium fuel cycles, and accelerator-driven systems for nuclear waste transmutation.
Second, and more broadly, fundamental physics research is the seed corn of future energy technology. Nuclear fission was once a laboratory curiosity. Fusion energy, which may finally be approaching viability, was pure physics for decades. The researchers using Electrek today aren't designing power plants. But the understanding of nuclear forces and symmetries they're building is the foundation on which future energy technologies will stand.
And let's note the geopolitical dimension. CSNS represents a massive investment by China in scientific infrastructure. While the US debates funding levels for its national laboratories, China is building world-class facilities and attracting international collaborations. In the long game of energy technology leadership, the country that invests in fundamental science today writes the rules of the energy economy tomorrow.
Alright, let's pull all of this together, because when you lay these 5 stories side by side, a pattern emerges that's impossible to ignore. We are living through a period where the old energy order and the new energy order are in direct, daily collision. And the battleground is everywhere: courtrooms, diplomatic summits, factory floors, research labs, and city streets.
Look at the through line. The Supreme Court tariff ruling is fundamentally about whether the US will allow cheaper clean energy technology to flow across its borders. The Iran standoff is about the geopolitics of fossil fuel dependency creating perpetual crisis. Taiwan's scooter revolution shows what's possible when a government actually aligns policy with the energy transition instead of fighting it. And the battery and nuclear research papers show that the science is advancing whether the politics keeps up or not.
The winners and losers are becoming clearer by the day. Fossil fuel incumbents benefit from tariffs on Chinese solar and EV components. They benefit from Iran tensions that keep oil prices elevated. They benefit from policy inaction that slows the transition. Every month of delay is another month of market share protected, another month of profits preserved.
But the forces pushing toward clean energy are relentless. The cost curves on solar, batteries, and electric transportation continue to fall. The science continues to advance. Countries like Taiwan demonstrate that transition is not only possible but popular when the incentives are right. And now the U.S. judiciary is telling the executive branch it can't unilaterally wall off American consumers from the global clean energy market.
The question for our audience tonight is simple. Are we going to let the transition happen, driven by economics and science and rational policy? Or are we going to let entrenched interests use trade wars, military threats, and political gridlock to slow it down at immense cost to ordinary people? Because that's the choice being made right now, in real time, in every one of these stories.
And that choice has consequences measured in dollars at the gas pump, in the air quality your children breathe, in the stability of the global order, and ultimately in whether we meet the climate challenge or fail it. These aren't abstract policy debates. They are decisions that shape daily life for billions of people.
That's our show for tonight. Every story we covered comes back to a single truth: the future of energy is being decided right now, not in some distant future, but in courtrooms, in labs, on factory floors, and in the streets of cities like Taipei. Pay attention. Follow the money. Ask who benefits.
I'm Maya Clarity. Read the sources we cited tonight. The South China Morning Post, Al Jazeera, Electrek, and the research on AR-14. Don't take our word for it. Verify it yourself. That's what journalism is supposed to be about.
And I'm Alex Truth. This has been Truth Report. Stay informed, stay skeptical, and we'll see you next time.
Good night.